This video is brought to you by John Robson Guitar Tuition. If you enjoy the content, please consider supporting the channel by enrolling on a course, purchasing some guitar lessons or a t-shirt, or you can join my Patreon. Now, on with the show. Hello chaps, welcome once again to John Robson Guitar Tuition. As always, I do hope you're well. Today's Tuesday, which means that we're doing a top 5 list. And as you've probably already seen via the thumbnail and the title of this video, today I'm going to be talking about bits of gear, guitars and guitar-related paraphernalia, as it were, that I sort of fell out of love with. All of the things on this list were things that I coveted and really wanted and eventually got, and either straight away realised that no, this isn't for me, or just gradually thought, yeah, I'm not playing that much, or I'm not using that very much these days. This isn't me trying to badmouth what may or may not be your favourite pieces of gear. This is just me saying, yeah, on reflection, I don't think this is for me. So, let's get started straight away with
Stratocasters.
Indeed, Stratocasters. Now, cast your mind back to the 90s, or even earlier, the 1980s. The thought then of not owning a Stratocaster for me, or a Strat-style guitar, was a complete anathema. Stratocasters were the ultimate evolutionary pinnacle of the electric guitar kind of species, really, and, they're just so versatile and you can do everything with them. I mean, there's a lot of truth in that. You think of, essentially Hank Marvin, Jimi Hendrix, Rory Gallagher and Mark Knopfler, the range of tones from just those players alone, all playing basically the same instrument. That is, unquestionably a versatile instrument. My love affair with Stratocasters started in about 1985 or 86, and I've mentioned this before on the channel. There was a sort of an audience with Carl Perkins, kind of all-star jam rockabilly session kind of thing that was on Channel 4 in the UK, and as you can see there, George Harrison was involved, so was Ringo Starr and the lads from the Stray Cats, and loads of people, including a certain Mr. Clapton there, who you can see playing his famous mongrel Stratocaster Blackie. And for me, I mean, Clapton stole the show, just his performance and his tone. It was one of those rare occasions in the 80s where he was doing something more than just phoning it in, and you could almost feel the sparks coming out of his fingers as he was playing. And I thought, I want a guitar that looks like that and sounds like that. I was a impoverished student at the time and couldn't afford a Fender Stratocaster, but I had a CSL Stratocaster copy that was that looked very much the same if you half closed your eyes, and then eventually got a Strat and had various Strats. But these days it's, I don't know, I'm thinking about when was it? Probably about 2006 or 7. I started getting Telecaster curious, and got a Telecaster and discovered, it does everything that I like a Strat for, but it doesn't do any of the stuff I don't like. I've never really got on with the bridge pickup on a Strat, and I sort of fell out of love with those kind of quacky in-between positions as well. So on a typical Strat, I would have like the neck pickup and a humbucker in the bridge usually, just to kind of fatten that up. But that's all I would use. So out of the 5 sounds on a Strat, I would probably use 2, but I would use all 3 on a Telecaster. And that was, I think, the moment where, I was converted to twin pickup guitars rather than 3 pickup guitars. The most recent Strat style guitar I had was the Sire Larry Carlton S7. And that is a supreme example of the breed. It's just a fantastic Strat-style guitar. Feels like it should cost about $2,000. Beautiful instrument. And yet I just found myself not playing it. So that's it now. I'm done with Strats. If a guitar as good as that Sire S7 wasn't going to tempt me to pick it up in place of the Telecaster or the Les Paul or whatever else I've got in here, then I don't think there's probably going to be any Strat style guitar that's going to kind of make me reach for it, really. So yeah, I am an ex-Stratocaster player. Next.
ES335 style guitars.
Yeah, speaking of Sire Larry Carlton guitars, this is another one that passed through my hands, the Sire Larry Carlton H7. I first got into Larry Carlton's playing, I guess, in the early 90s. There was a chap on he still is, a fellow on the local music scene round here, an absolutely astonishing guitar player called Andy Power. Not Andy Powell, as in Wishbone Ash, Andy Power. And he was playing a 335, and he sort of turned me on to Larry Carlton. I got to know Andy. I still see him round and about occasionally. Absolutely fantastic player. If you live on Teesside and you get the chance to go and see any band that he's in playing, go and see them. You'll have a good night. But yeah, Andy was playing a 335 for a little while, getting amazing tones out of it and just sounding fantastic. And, he would kind of, talk to me about Larry Carlton and loan me the odd album or two and, kind of turn me on to that and onto Larry's playing. And I just thought, this is such a fantastic sounding guitar. I've got to get one. And I've had a few over the years. I think I had an Epiphone Dot for a little while once. I had one of those Trev Wilkinson vintage ones as well. That was a great guitar. And most recently, the Sire Larry Carlton H7. Now, if you're going to make, a 335 style guitar and get Larry Carlton's endorsement for it, like Sire did, then it's got to be pretty good. And the Sire H7 is an astonishingly good guitar. It is fantastic. Probably like the S7, the best example of the breed that I've played. Well, in my recollection, really, it's a fantastic guitar. But yet again, it was just hanging on the wall behind me there. And yeah, I don't feel like playing that one today. Where's me Les Paul? I don't feel like playing that one today. Where's me Telecaster? I don't feel like playing that one today. So in the end, it got sold. It wasn't earning its keep. I can't say that I dislike 335 style guitars, but my experience of having owned a few of them is that once the novelty wears off, and I'm not really I don't find myself reaching for it on a regular basis. So I think that is my inner self trying to tell me something about what I like and what I don't like. So once again, if the guitar that Larry Carlton himself endorses isn't going to be the guitar that makes me want to kind of pick up that style of guitar, then I don't think anything is likely to. So once again, I am an ex-335 player. Next.
Locking tremolos.
Yeah, these horrible things, locking trems. With the previous examples, it's been a case of, I can't really pinpoint the moment when I kind of fell out of love with this, that, or the other. With locking trems, I can absolutely pinpoint the moment. It's like probably the first time I changed strings on a guitar with a locking trem. My first guitar with a locking trem, I believe, was one of the original Fender heavy metal Strats that had the Carla Spider locking trem on it. And, in the 80s, I started the 1980s as a teenager and ended it as a 20-year-old. How old was I in 89? 23. I was in 29 in 89 rather. And that's so from kind of the age of 13 to the age of 23. That's a formative period in your life. That's when you kind of form a lot of opinions. And because you are that age, those opinions are very strong opinions, aren't they? Every guitar magazine that you opened in the 1980s, every guitar had a locking trem. It was just, why would you not want a guitar with a locking trem? I mean, one ridiculous example is Midge Ure of Ultravox fame, in the 1980s, and he's got what looks, is that a Yamaha kind of arch-top jazz box guitar, and you can see he's had a Carla locking trem hacked into it. I mean, this was how ubiquitous the locking trem was in the 80s. And, the thing is, guitars with locking trems were expensive, back then anyway, so they were out of reach. So, it's expensive. Everybody's, all kind of guitar guys in the magazines are all playing locking trems. It's aspirational. I want one. I need one. You're not a proper guitarist unless you've got a guitar with a locking trem on it. My first Les Paul was a Les Paul Deluxe. It was absolutely knackered and battered, and I've spoken about this before, but I bought it when I was at college in the 80s. And, Les Pauls were dirt cheap then. Why? Well, partially because they didn't have locking trems on them. It was just such a kind of blanket thing that all guitars had to have locking trems. And then I got one, a Fender Heavy Metal Strat in, I think, about 1989 or I think it was 89. Didn't really get on with it. Well, okay, that's a Carla system. Let's go and get something with a Floyd Rose on it. So I think it was a Jackson, either a Charvel or a Jackson. Because with Charvel and Jackson, one was the expensive brand and one was a little bit cheaper. Whichever one at the time was the cheaper one, I bought. And again, I just couldn't get the thing to stay in tune. The Ibanez Edge trem. It was an Ibanez RG something or other that I got, and again, all the same hassles. I know some people know the kind of the magic, the secret to keep these things in tune and to get them in tune and everything, but I've never been a member of that club, and all of that hassle just so you can dive bomb a squealy kind of pinched harmonic. It's it not only put me off locking trems, but it put me off tremolo systems for a good long while. So yeah, locking trems, never ever again. Next.
Chorus.
I used to have one of these in the effects loop of whatever amp I was running at the time, permanently switched on. This is, of course, an old Boss Chorus Ensemble pedal. Wish I'd still got it, actually, because they're going for ridiculous money now if you've got one of these old ones like this. But mine just can't. I think I gave it away years ago. It was a little bit scratchy and a little bit broken, but given what prices they're fetching now, it would have been worth repairing. Anyway, it's again, growing up in the 80s, everything had that chorusy shimmer on it, didn't it? That I blame Andy Summers, really, all those early Police records, like Walking on the Moon and everything, with that kind of shimmery, kind of lovely, as I thought at the time, sound. And this is just purely one of those things where when you overuse a particular sound, you just get sort of bored with it, and it becomes something that you recoil from a little bit. I've said this before, it's a little bit like, when you kind of get ridiculously drunk in your younger days on a particular alcoholic beverage, and then you can never face it again. With me, Carlsberg Special Brew, by the way. It's just, I just OD'd so much on that kind of stratty sound with loads of chorus and everything on it that was just, that became the sound I used all the time. And now it's like I will use it occasionally for very specific purposes if I'm listening to a guitar part that I've recorded and I think, yeah, let's put a little bit of chorus on there, but, I can probably count on the fingers of one hand the number of times a year that I do that. So it's very much, whereas once upon a time it was like chorus on all the time. Why not? Why would you turn the chorus off? But nowadays it's like, yeah, well, we'll just keep that in the box until it's absolutely necessary. Next.
Light gauge strings.
Again, the 1980s has a lot to answer for. Light gauge strings. These are 7-gauge strings, and I believe I used to use 7-gauge strings back in the early to mid 80s, because I remember going into there was a music store, a music shop in my hometown of Middlesbrough called Hamilton's. And it was your typical old school music shop where, you know, it was all kind of brass and woodwind and, you know, kind of respectable instruments on the ground floor. And then all of the kind of noisy reprobate electric stuff was in a little kind of cellar that was right at the back of the shop. And and everybody in front of house, everybody in the main shop was all kind of suit and tie and very respectable. And in the kind of electric guitar section, it was long hair, T-shirts and jeans were the order of the day. It was like a different establishment, and just. I remember going in there one day and needing some guitar strings. And, knew nothing, of course. I was probably about 14 or 15 years old, knew nothing about what I needed. I knew I want a guitar string, I've broken mine, that kind of thing. And the bloke behind the counter said, well, what gauge? I don't know. He says, well, do you play electric guitar? Yeah. He says, well, okay. And he looked at me and thought, poor lad, probably going to struggle with anything heavy gauge. Or maybe he just had a job lot of these that he needed to shift. So anyway, sold me a pack of 7-gauge guitar strings that I think probably went on my satellite Les Paul copy, which is something of a element of folklore about that guitar on this channel. I'm still looking around to grab one and see if it's as bad as I remember. But anyway, I just got addicted to light gauge strings, and reading in guitar magazines that some people were using 9-gauge or 10-gauge strings. God, they must have superhuman strength, and but then never really put two and two together. That why am I breaking strings all the time? Because I've got these things that are thinner than a human hair. On my guitar, so gradually kind of went from 7s to 8s and stayed there for quite a while. I think for most of the rest of the 80s I was on 8s. Then took my guitar to a guitar shop to get it set up, and they said, you'd probably break a lot less strings if you went up to 9-gauge strings. So then up to 9s. Then another time a guy set up my guitar for me, and he said, why don't you just put a set of 10s on this? I'll set it up so that it's easy enough to play. You're not going to kind of struggle with a high action or anything like that. And that is, I think, the truth as well. A lot of people compensate for a bad setup by putting lighter gauge strings on. But I think finally I had it was one of my Strats actually. I had a guitar that was properly set up that had like kind of, oh, there's my phone. Yeah, where was I? Yes, I found when I went up to progressively as I went up through different gauges of strings from 7s to 8s to 9s and so on, and eventually onto the 10s that I've settled on nowadays. Again, I can count on the fingers of one hand the number of broken strings I have in a year. So 10s go on everything now. Fender scale length, Gibson scale length, PRS scale length 10s. I even use 10-gauge on my acoustic guitars, like acoustic 10-gauge strings at least. And that seems to suit me. It's I've been on a bit of a journey with string gauges over the past few decades. God, I feel really old saying that. So there you go. There are 5 bits of guitar-related gear or guitars themselves, that I have gradually fallen out of love with, or in the case of locking trems, very, very quickly fallen out of love with over the years. Let me know what your experiences are down in the comments. Let me know if you've got a similar list. Pieces of gear that ultimately you just didn't take to. Let me know downstairs in the comments. But that is pretty much it for today, folks. Hope you've enjoyed the video and found it entertaining in some small way. And if that's the case, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you haven't already done so. And why not drop me a like as well while you're at it. Don't forget the live stream every Friday, 5 PM UK time, where we drink beer and talk about music and guitars. Great way to kick off the weekend. I'd love to see you there if you can make it. But for now, I'll bid you all a good day and say thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time. Look after yourselves, folks. Stay well, stay safe, and above all, stay sane. Bye for now.